Carlos Baleba was the dream for Manchester United during the summer, and make no mistake, he remains the dream for the January transfer window. Now, Fabrizio Romano has already confirmed United's plans for January around a midfield signing, and I'm going to discuss them in this video. But there is something that needs to be said about Baleba, which I genuinely do believe changes the strategy and approach. Now, make sure you subscribe if you're new, though, for daily United videos. So the Carlos Baleba talk is back again only a couple of days after the window, after Fabrizio Romano has said that United want to sign a midfielder in January. Of course we want to sign a midfielder in January. We wanted to sign a midfielder in the summer, and we didn't. But there's two particular things I want to speak about here in terms of precedent, in terms of strategy moving forward, and what United, I think, are going to be doing between now and January. When it comes to Baleba, you can let me know in the comments. Do you think that United will go back in for him? And how much do you think he goes for? It's the same conversation, I suppose, you had in the summer. But you know full well that United wanted an athletic midfielder. It's kind of one of the top priorities going into the summer. I felt it should have been the priority. After we signed Cunha and Mbeumo, Jason Wilcox pushed for a striker. That's why we signed the striker, because our football director directed the football strategy. But United still approached Baleba. Caught us all by surprise. But then only a couple of weeks later, we pulled out of any sort of deal to sign him. We tried to turn his head. We were successful. We went to Brighton to try and negotiate a price. We weren't successful. They wanted north of 100. We were willing to pay in the region of, 60, 70 mil? It didn't work. Now, if you look at Baleba's performances at the start of the season so far, I think you can tell that his head got turned in the summer. He's not been the same level of player that he was. I'm going to be watching him with a close eye across the course of this season, because I think that's going to be partly what United might be banking on now. Brighton won't like it, but I think it's kind of part of the strategy. Go in there early, show your intent during the summer, see what happens between now and January, and maybe use that as a bit of leverage, kind of January transfer window, which Fabrizio Romano has sort of repeated kind of the obvious here, but United want a midfielder.
Because the interest on Baleba remains. But just in general, just to clarify, Man United maintained the idea to add one more player in midfield. It wasn't possible this summer, but Manchester United maintained the idea to do one more signing in the January transfer window. Might be more based on the opportunities on the...
Right. And this is where we need to have a conversation about Baleba, because I think the strategy on this is really important. I like the fact that United went after the top choice that we could have possibly gone after in the summer when nobody else did. That, I wouldn't say it gives you an advantage overall, but showing the intent that early certainly shows to Baleba's camp how serious we are about signing him. And that's why I want to use this example of Luis Diaz. And anybody who watches the live shows will know I've used this as a sort of bit of a, what do you call it, precedent? But I think a prime example here of what happens when you can accelerate plans to get ahead of others. Now, you may or may not remember, Spurs tried to sign Luis Diaz in the January window before Liverpool did. You can see the date there I've highlighted. The 25th of January, Spurs had a 37.5 mil bid rejected. 5 days later, Liverpool signed him for a deal worth in the region of 50 mil. Liverpool had no intention of signing Luis Diaz in the January transfer window. They wanted Luis Diaz in the summer, but because of Spurs going after him, they accelerated and pulled forward their plans to try and sign him, and they did sign him in January. I think that's one example that needs to be taken into account, and sort of while I'm explaining this strategy for how we go after Baleba, but also this, and Caicedo is the second example. Again, Liverpool involved in this situation. There was a bidding war you can see down here. Look, Liverpool agreed a deal worth 111 mil, and then he went for 115 mil, and he always wanted to go to Chelsea. Both of those two things have to be taken into account when speaking about Baleba, because if you look towards next summer, it's going to be different to this summer, and that's why United, I think, went and tried to sign it. They knew that if we went straight to Brighton, it would have been a hard no immediately, and there's no leverage to gain there. So we tried to turn him, and we did turn him. And I think, as I said, I think that's partly why he's not playing so well at the start of this season. But if United are serious about going after this lad, I would be surprised if we were able to sign him in the summer. I think it's an absolute sure thing that City move Rodri on in the summer and just spend bucket loads of cash trying to buy the best ready-made replacement. Now, I'm not saying that Baleba is going to tick every single box that Rodri does, but as far as that all-powerful, physical, athletic midfielder who is ready, Premier League proven, you're not going to get better than Carlos Baleba. You really, really aren't. And Liverpool, look, they might come in for him. I don't really know what's going on in their midfield as far as the summer is concerned, but they spent 418 mil this summer, so you can't exactly rule them out. But my point here is I think United are going to have to pull forward plans and funds from anything to do with next summer if we are serious about Baleba. And we've shown that we're serious about him by going after him this summer. So that's us pretty much pulling forward plans there straight away. We have to repeat that in January if we, I think, have any chance of signing him. Otherwise, I think you're going to be opening up a bidding war. I imagine City coming for him. I don't really think Arsenal need him per se right now. Chelsea will always try and sign every single player, so they'll probably be involved in it. Well, let's be totally honest. And I think he'd probably be out of Newcastle's price range. But I just don't see United winning a bidding war for Baleba next summer in a way that I think we could win it in January. So it's going to be interesting to watch our strategy on this. I think United, as I say, will be watching Baleba's performances closely with Brighton. In their mind, they're probably thinking, well, if he has a slow 3-4 months, then it will give a little bit more leverage and negotiation to United. My personal take, still, I just don't see him going for less than that. And that's what I mean about pulling forward funds. I don't particularly see a benefit to Brighton. Hey, look, things can change in the course of the season, but as it stands, I don't particularly see how Brighton are going to benefit from selling their prized asset in January when the market for him wouldn't be as busy as it would be in the summer, where obviously more clubs come in for him. So I don't particularly see them selling him in January unless it's for a top-tier bid. But if United are serious and we want to get ahead of other clubs like Liverpool getting ahead of Spurs to sign Luis Diaz in January, then I think we have to sign Carlos Baleba in January. And I think if we don't sign him in January, I think he goes to a different club and United move on. And it's something else I want to do as well is I want to look at other targets. Because if United got 3-4 months to prep for a potential Baleba move, that's 3-4 months to prep for looking around the markets, seeing who's available in the same way that they had their succession plan from Caicedo to Baleba. Then what would their next succession plan be if Baleba was to leave? They'll have someone lined up. United should have alternatives. And if we can find that person, the next Baleba or the next Warden, it's kind of something I've spoken about us being better at. But yeah, I just wanted to say that. I think strategy-wise, everything hinges on January when it comes to Baleba. And I think if we don't sign him then, I don't think we will.